the Linux distro community, DistroWatch.com, and Spatry's Cup of Linux presents the Linux Zoo Crew. If you would like to catch some of my back episodes, listen to this show live as it's being recorded, or subscribe to my RSS feed, please point your web browser to youtube.com/user/LinuxSpatry. In the podcast section, you will find information attached to each Zoo Crew episode in the show notes. We would like to thank DistroWatch.com for mirroring the Zoo Crew podcasts. DistroWatch, your one-stop solution for distributions and information. Stop on DistroWatch.com and give them your support. All right, welcome to yet another fabulous Linux Zoo Crew. And today on the Zoo, we have a very special treat for you today. We have Brian Manderville, the developer of DescentOS, and he is going to be sharing about his latest release that will be coming out this Wednesday. But before we begin our discussion, I would like to share a few words with you from our founder, Voltam.
Hi, I'm Voltam, founder of the Linux distro community. The Linux distro community is a place for people to hang out and discuss Linux distros, software, and open source. The Linux distro community is a community funded by its members for its members. We are a friendly, welcoming community that encourages people who use Linux operating systems and software to share their passion and knowledge with other people. We believe that when people share information freely, everyone benefits. We'd love to see you become a part of the Linux distro community. You can voice chat with us on Mumble or text chat with us in IRC. Head over to linuxdistrocommunity.com for details. Join in today in the sharing of knowledge and the freedom that a Linux operating system gives people. Thank you.
All right, welcome one and all. Lectro, would you please introduce our guests today on the panel?
Right, today we have Brian, myself, QUIDSUP, and Spatry.
QUIDSUP, good to see you. How have you been, mate?
Right, Spatry. Yeah, good, thanks.
Yeah, always good to have you on the show. Welcome back. And Brian, very good to have you on the show as well. You'll remember that I did a very nice review of DescentOS, and so it was very nice of PingCasts to introduce you and to have you here. And unfortunately, for one reason or another, PingCasts couldn't make it this evening, but it's great to have you. Now, basically, for those of you who do not know, DescentOS is another Ubuntu-based distribution. This is a 32-bit operating system that brings a few different things to the table. One of the things that really caught my eye when I installed this and reviewed this was its application launcher. It uses the very first version of Slingshot. I thought that was really beautiful. It looks like a Unity lens, but it isn't quite like one. It looks like it, but it doesn't quite behave like that. Please tell us a little bit about your distribution and some of the changes that you have coming up on your release that's coming out Wednesday.
Well, the original goal back when I first released the stable version of DescentOS, which was actually version 2.1, my main goal was because there was GNOME 3 and Unity, and they were touted as the new modern paradigm for desktops, even though no one really liked it. So my mission was to kind of modernize the old GNOME 2 desktop into something new. So that's why I got Slingshot. I got it to look and behave a bit like GNOME 3, a bit like Unity, but still has a functionality of GNOME 2. But GNOME 2 is a dead project, so I had to transfer over to Mate, and that's been a very interesting experience, mainly because for the first time and ever since its inception, it's been stable enough for me to actually come out with a distro that works. So.
Yes, and I have seen Mate mature and that sort of thing. It is looking a lot better, and I like what Mate is bringing to the table. But personally, I gotta say, I've got a soft spot for the underdog, and I like XFCE as a desktop. Have you had a chance to have a look at that?
Yes, I have. I was actually originally planning on making a XFCE version of DescentOS 3. I'm going to see how much time I actually have to work on it first. but I would like to come out with an XFCE version eventually.
Now, it's my understanding this is a 32-bit only OS. Is that correct, or are you planning on moving on to the 64-bit arena?
Well, I'm planning on getting a version of the 64-bit Descent OS out after I release the 32-bit version. It's going to take a little while because I am working on this myself, and I just need to make sure I get everything working on the 64-bit version, get it stable, and then I'll release it as well.
And that's the thing. I've got to give credit where credit is due, because there are a lot of distributions out there that actually have a team of developers. And, well, there's a few, I'm not going to mention any names, but there are a few distributions out there that actually have a team of developers, and they're putting out garbage. And the thing is, like you, Ping Guy, also, you guys are a one-man show. You're putting together a well-thought-out distribution, and the community can't thank you enough for your contributions. Now, Brian, the other day we were discussing PAE kernels and that sort of thing for people like me who have more than 4 gigs of RAM installed. Can you please tell me a little bit about that, about, people who may be using more memory on their computers and how they can get the most out of your operating system, even though it is a 32-bit, and be able to use that extra memory? I know you mentioned something about the installer installing a PAE kernel. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah, well, the upstream installer Ubiquity actually does install a PAE kernel when it installs the new packages onto your hardware. So you are able to see up to, I think it's 32 gigabytes of RAM with a PAE kernel. And and after that, you see all the RAM. There are some caveats of having 64-bit still if you have, more than 4 gigabytes of RAM, but that's the main thing, is you're going to be able to see all your RAM. You're going to be able to get your performance out of your hardware. So the installer automatically installs the new kernel upon installation to hardware.
Now, I know, Lectro, before the show, you had a few questions that you had for Brian. Go ahead and share some of those questions, if you will.
Can't remember what questions I was going to say now.
Okay.
Okay. I can't remember the question.
That's okay. I remember you asking earlier, Electro, is this based on Ubuntu 12.04 or 12.04.1?
Yeah, I was wondering, is because obviously you're going to be releasing it next Wednesday, and 12.04.1 is out, which would save you a hell of a lot of space for your users on updates. Are you going to change it to 12.04.1 or leave it as 12.04?
Yeah, I'm absolutely going to update it. I always run a package update before I release it, just so people get the latest packages when I release it.
Okay, now QUIDSUP is also with us, and his show caters to Ubuntu-based distributions and that sort of thing, and I know that he's using that exclusively as a desktop. Do you have any questions or comments that you would like to share with the community?
Yeah, well, one thing I'm always sort of dubious now with these new Linux distributions, I do feel in some respects there are perhaps too many, but I've seen some of the work you've done on this one, Brian, and it does look interesting. Where are you sort of trying to go with? You're trying to make it, say, smaller, a bit more usable than Ubuntu, a bit more memory efficient, maybe? Or what sort of users are you trying to aim for with this distro?
Well, I'm trying to make it so people who, like the old desktop paradigm still have a modern system to use. I'm basically making it for anyone. If you're a power user, it can be very keyboard heavy, because I know as a developer I use the keyboard more than I use the mouse anyways. And if you're a new user, you have your panels, you have your start menu, you have the eye candy that people love. You have all this stuff that you could use to put on older hardware or newer hardware. It doesn't really matter, because Mate is actually pretty light relatively. I have made an effort to make sure it does not use much RAM out of the box. So it's more for general usage. I want to make a distro that everyone can use comfortably on, any type of hardware, as long as it's supported, which on Linux is just about everything.
What would you say your minimum system requirements for this distribution would be?
I ran it on a old laptop from 2003 that had 384 megabytes of RAM and a 1.4 gigahertz Celeron.
Electro.
Have you thought of having going over to Cinnamon on it as well, or are you trying to stay away from Cinnamon?
I'm trying to stay away from Cinnamon, mainly because that's Linux Mint's project, and I'm also Ubuntu based. I don't want to make a Linux Mint clone. I want to have something of my own.
Now, can you think of anything new that your distribution is bringing to the table that other distributions out there just do not have?
Well, it does bring on the fact that May can be a viable solution for people with who still don't like Unity, don't like Cinnamon, don't like GNOME 3, don't like KDE, don't like XFCE. They don't like any of the current desktop environments. It gives them an opportunity to get a fresh outlook on things, yet they can still feel comfortable in where they've been for the past few years.
Now, I really loved Slingshot, and I mentioned that in the beginning, that you have that for navigating all of the installed applications on your system, and I want to thank you for actually sending me a copy of the one that of the version that you're using on that. You mentioned that you were going to contact the developers to see if they had the source code on that particular release of Slingshot so that you could actually fork it. Did you have any success with that?
I haven't actually gotten around to that yet. I could go ahead and install the Natty PPA for it and just, apt-get source it. That's probably what I'm going to do, because I know that they've updated the Slingshot into a whole different new menu system, and obviously I like the old version. I want to service the old version because that fits what I want to do with my own distro, and, people really do like the old Slingshot version, so...
All right, good stuff. Yeah, and I really like the way the old version works, and I'm actually using that. I actually replaced my Mint menu with the version of Slingshot, so I can't thank you enough for sending me that. And I'd like to see what direction you take that in. And speaking of directions, what do you see in the future for Descent OS?
Well, in terms of the future, once I get 3 out, 3 is a very big release because it is long-term support. It is. It's going to be supported as for at least a few years. In terms of the new direction of Descent OS, I am mulling a turn to Debian base because I like having more control over what I do. I like having my own format of how I make my own distro. I like having my own, branding to it. I like having systemd instead of upstart, which you can actually do on Debian in a live format if you know what you're doing. And there's a lot of changes I would like to make to the core of the distro. And I think that Debian might be the way of the future. It's not an official move yet, but it's one I am very heavily considering and would love to move forward with that.
Sounds like a great idea. And would you be using the SID, the testing, or would you be using the stable branch if you were to consider that?
Well, I'm actually working on getting a repository right now where I could get all the packages I want to be stable for the absolute core of the operating system itself, like, mate, and I'm going to repackage Firefox because that's what beginners are familiar with instead of Iceweasel, and then I'm going to hook up with the SID repositories for the packages that aren't necessarily intrinsic to the stability of the actual operating system itself.
Sounds great. Sounds like a lot of good things are coming your way in the future, and I wish you the best of luck with this. All I can say is from what I have seen so far, and I am eagerly awaiting for Wednesday when you have the final release available so that I can have a look at it and review it for my audience. I know a lot of people are going to be excited to hear about this, and so I eagerly await, and I understand you only have a few little tweaks yet to go. I think you mentioned that you had some theming things that you wanted to do, and then a few updates. Tell me what you have headed, before you can put that final release out.
It's mainly just polish. I'm just adding a few more tweaks to it, just making sure the theming looks good, making sure LXCM looks good, making sure it looks absolutely polished, and then I'm going to put in a few scripts to make installation of things like Desura very easy. I'm going to put in just a few installation scripts for beginners to actually go off and do that instead of them trying to figure out how to do it on their own. And then I'm also going to write a beginner's guide that I'm actually going to have inside of the help menu.
That is an excellent idea, and there are so many distributions that I've looked at that tout themselves as a beginner's distribution, yet they don't have any documentation available on the desktop or in a help menu or anything like that. So that is definitely going to be welcome to anybody who wants to find out information. Now, I had asked you earlier, what about people who are new that want to be able to run DVDs and multimedia and that sort of thing? And you had indicated earlier that you were going to have that information available. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, now one of our listeners asks that if you move over to a Debian base, will you implement System D? And I believe you said that you would be able to do that. Is that correct?
Yes, I would.
Okay.
System D is so much better than Upstart, but that's only my opinion right now. So.
Okay, wonderful. Now, QUIDSUP had an opportunity to review this distribution earlier today. And what are your impressions of the distribution that you downloaded and have a look at today? And that was a release candidate.
Yeah, was it? Do you remember was it the Alpha 2 or the release candidate? So I can just check with you on that one, Brian.
Does it have a blue background or a background of a lake?
Oh, I changed it. I was trying to use the terminal earlier and found I couldn't actually read it, so I ended up putting a black background on.
Then you probably had the Alpha 2 because you could read it just fine with the dark background.
Right, yeah, then that makes sense. That was a couple of things I was thinking of on the distro. The terminal program you have in there, it was the Quake terminal. I was trying to find just one of the ordinary ones, like GNOME terminal. That wasn't in there.
Well, you have the mate terminal, but I have Quake in there for a lot of the power users who like to. I know Spatry loves Quake terminal, but I am a power user myself, so I like having the terminal up there so I can get all my stuff out of the way yet doing everything like that. So, it's just personal preference, really.
But
putting things I like in there too.
Yeah, but that's the thing. That is a really nice addition, especially for power users like us who want to have quick access to the terminal. I have mine mapped to the tilde key, just like in the old Quake game. Funny, I do it that way. And then I can just simply issue commands really quick, just by having a single key to press on the keyboard. I think it's wonderful that you decided to include that. Now, Riley on IRC wanted to ask, if you move to the Debian base, will you have stuff like Pulse Audio integrated into it and stuff like PAVU controls on it? Because Riley's stating that he's had issues with Pulse on Debian.
I usually just prefer. Also, I'd have to see just how I do love Pulse Audio, and I would see how it behaves first out of actually testing it before I make any decision like that. So that's why ALSA is primary, because ALSA works with everything. So.
But the thing is, I'd like to point out to you guys that now Riley also mentioned that they use ALSA Mixer, and that is an XFCE on Mint, which is my main OS that I'm running. But I actually downloaded and installed the Pulse Audio volume control, and I'm not having any problem between ALSA and Pulse Audio and that sort of thing. They seem to be working quite well together, and I'm very pleased with that, with its performance. Do you think you'd be able to put something together that would work in harmony on the system?
Yeah, I'm going to make sure it works before I release it, and I do test things a lot, and I try to make things as easy and painless for people who are new to the distro and people who really can't be bothered with setting it up. Because if you're a developer, you pretty much want to start on your developing immediately instead of having to worry about getting your Pulse Audio to work, getting your ALSA to work, getting your video drivers to work, and all that. So. See how it works first before I implement it, but I've used Pulse Audio for a couple of years now, and I've never had an issue with it either, but I had to think about everyone else as well.
Exactly, and that's the thing, because when you're using multiple applications that use sound and that sort of thing, having a good balance between Pulse Audio and ALSA is critical. And it's great for beginners because then they don't have to go mucking about with config files and all of this stuff. And if you want to really have a good solid distribution that beginners are going to be able to latch onto, it's good to always dot your I's and cross your T's, before putting a good release out. So I think that what you're doing here and what you have planned is really going to be welcome to the Linux community, and I can't thank you enough for your contribution.
It's not a problem. I just enjoy what I do, and I like having people's input, and I'm going to keep doing this because it's A, a hobby, and B, what I really love to do, so I'm never going to stop it. there's a lot of people out there who are looking for a distro like this, and I would just love to deliver it to them.
Okay, now I see that Conduolo thinks that Pulse Audio handles USB devices better and managing those across different software. That's a good point that he brought up.
It is.
How do you see that?
Oh, I agree completely. I mean, I'm using Pulse Audio right now on my Descent OS release candidate, and, I have a USB mic, and it was very quick to configure and get ready for Mumble, so...
All right, wonderful. Looks like PingCasts is in the house. I'm going to go ahead and pull him in and see if he has anything he would like to add to our conversation. Hi, PingCasts. How you doing today?
Hey, Spatry, how's it going?
Wonderful. Do you have any questions for Brian? That's okay. We've been talking about his latest release, and I know you're good friends with Brian and that sort of thing. And so pretty much we've covered a lot of stuff. Basically, we talked about what he's bringing to the table. We talked a little bit about Slingshot, which is his navigation system that he has in there. He's also adding a beginner's guide. This is going to use Mate as its environment, and this is going to be based on Ubuntu 12.04.1.
Last release that he used was based on XFCE. He had that really good version of Slingshot on it.
Yeah, that's actually the same version of Slingshot that's in this, and that was GNOME 2. I did come out with a proof of concept XFCE version for myself when I was still considering what I should do for this release, because at the time I was mulling, what I should do for this. Mate still wasn't stable enough for everyday use, so I almost went to XFCE, but Mate ended up becoming usable enough for me to come out with a good distro.
Yeah, I hear it's been getting better.
In my personal experience, it has been getting much better.
Well, yeah, well then I definitely need to try out, I think it's an RC now, your next release.
Yeah, I have the RC out right now. I'm going to be releasing Descent OS 3 stable on Wednesday the 29th.
Nice, I'll take a look at the RC, I'll take a look at the final.
And hopefully you'll be able to see it here first on Spatry's Cup of Linux.
Unless I do one first.
Are you still doing the paradigm you had with the Docky on the left, the menu, sort of like the GNOME 2 panel with menu on the bottom, and then you had a slingshot, a button for slingshot up at the top?
Yes, I'm still finding that. I still follow that paradigm. That's the Descent OS look, and that's not going to change unless something happens that is better for, what I want to do. But that's the look of Descent OS. That's what you're going to get by default. The stable version is going to have more keyboard heavy as well. You're going to be able to, use Slingshot through your keyboard. You're going to have all these deconf bindings that are going to be able to, I should call it makeconf bindings for you to be able to use your keyboard with, Slingshot. So it's going to be very easy to use for power users as well.
Oh, that sounds great. What are you going to do when that version of Slingshot starts getting older? It could experience issues.
Well, I'm planning on forking it. I know it's in Vela, and I do know a little bit of Vela, so I'm just planning on servicing it and just updating it in case something happens for it, and, I want to preserve that because that is intrinsic to what I'm trying to do.
Alright, so what kind of key bindings have you added so far?
Well, people who are using, GNOME 2 are probably use GNOME 2 as well if they were keyboard heavy. That's probably the way people, launch Synapse and GNOME 2. I probably would not have the Slingshot launch that way because Slingshot actually kind of acts like a GNOME 2 launcher because, when you launch it, you can search immediately. And, when you start, it will probably be the Windows key in S or Super S or Metaphor S, whatever you want to use. It's going to act the same way, but it's going to have a different thing because I know people love Synapse as well, and I don't want to get that keyboard combination locked up with the other.
All right, lots of great food for thought here. We've had a wonderful conversation on this. Unfortunately, folks, we have run out of time. Brian, do you have any final thoughts you would like to share with us?
Just get out there and try it. I do like people's input. I do listen. Give it a chance. I do try to make this as best as I can, and I wouldn't be anywhere. I'd probably be making some weird, obscure operating system that, probably is total crap if I didn't have anyone's input. And I do want to thank the people who have helped out with the graphics and, ideas for the implementation of this. I do want to thank a lot of people for their contributions to the wallpapers, because the wallpapers I've gotten are just fantastic.
And the community can't thank you enough for your contribution here. Electro, do you have any final thoughts?
Did you ever thought when you called it Descent, people might think it's called Decent OS?
Yes, Sneaky Linux actually, the first review he had, spelled it Decent OS, and as well as when I submitted it to DistroWatch, when they said their new distributions thing, they actually spelled it as Decent as well. So it's kind of funny, but it's Descent OS. I kind of named it for two reasons. A, it was a game I was playing on DOSBox at the time that just sounded awesome for a name, so it's a cool word.
Well, once you get it working properly and get proper decent versions out, it will be a decent OS.
Sort of a play on words there. PingCasts.
It is a bit of a play on word.
Yeah, PingCasts, do you have any final thoughts?
Keep up the good work.
QUIDSUP, any final thoughts?
Yeah, a couple of things that you could do to make it a little bit better, Brian. You could put the updated repository for GIMP on there.
I did.
Oh, was it? All right.
Yeah, it's on the RC.
Sorry, later. Sorry, the alpha looked at wasn't.
Yeah,
my mistake.
it wasn't. I got scrapped for that.
All right. The other one, install Build Essential. Any thoughts about Ubuntu Software Center?
No, I don't want to on the Ubuntu Software Center. I tend to like Synaptic more. It's lighter, and honestly, every time I open up Ubuntu Software Center on running Ubuntu, I don't have a very powerful computer. It just locks up for about 30 seconds before it gets working, anyways. And when I'm testing things out in a Zephyr session, that does not necessarily work that well.
Yeah, it might help you newer users though.
That's why I want to say, what about if it's a beginner-friendly distro, how are beginners supposed to use Synaptic Package Manager when it's more of an advanced control over your packages?
Well, my thoughts on it is my mom uses it, and if she could use Synaptic, then lots of other people can. Once you learn how it works, you could just search for the package you want, and you still have a description on it when you click on it, so...
Something that could be a benefit, though, is I would be happy to contribute this to help out. Maybe doing a video tutorial on how to use the Synaptic Package Manager could be a benefit to beginners. And I think, and I'm surprised I've never done a tutorial on using the Synaptic Package Manager. So maybe that is something that I could cover in a later show, and then you could at least have a video to put up and a link to put up on the on your channels, so that newcomers would be able to see the Synaptic Package Manager for what it is, and then be able to install applications that way.
Also, to add on to that, I am coming out with a beginner's guide that's going to be on the distro when it comes out final. So I could always write a tutorial on how to use Synaptic on that too.
Exactly. So at least we can have those bases covered, but I can also understand, yes, on older hardware, the Ubuntu Software Center may run a little bit slow. I'd have to agree with you there.
Yeah, I'm going to Spatry all them videos you've got on YouTube and not even done a Synaptic Package Manager one.
Yeah, I've never done a tutorial on the Synaptic Package Manager. It's a wonderful idea, and I think that's exactly what is going to be on the lineup for this week. So, yeah, definitely some good food for thought. Okay, I have an announcement I would like to make before we close the show out. Next Saturday, there will not be a Zoo Crew episode. We are going to have it at a special time. We are going to be having the next Zoo Crew episode on Thursday, August the 30th at 8 p.m. We are going to be having Glenn MacArthur, the developer of AV Linux, on the show, and so we'll be at a special time. He cannot make it on the show on the weekends, so we figured we'd do a special time, and then that way I can have a Saturday night off to enjoy some peace and quiet and that sort of thing. So there will be no Zoo Crew on Saturday, but it will be a few days earlier on Thursday night. I will have that information in the show notes for everybody as a reminder, and I'll also put up another video. Brian, I'd like to thank you for being on the show. Thank you, Electro. Thank you, PingCasts. Thank you, QUIDSUP. And I'd like to thank everybody in the Cup of Linux listening room who has participated on IRC. Thank you, all of you, for your comments and that sort of thing. And we will see you all Thursday night for our next show. Thank you once again, and we will see you then. Ciao.
Today's show was brought to you by the Linux Distro Community. Visit us today at linuxdistrocommunity.com and chat with us on Mumble or in IRC on the Freenode Network in the Linux Distro Community channel. The Linux Distro Community. Freedom through the sharing of knowledge.